My brother's daughter ruined my son's backyard movie birthday by throwing his projector into the pool. My father and my brother stood there proudly. That night, I canceled his ski resort vacation and her private dance camp. But a letter arrived the next morning, and she dropped the new iPad. The extension cord ran through the grass in a straight line from the patio outlet to the fence post. I taped it flat every 3 feet so no kid would trip on it. The projector sat on a plywood shelf I had bolted into the post 2 weeks earlier, the lens angled at the white sheet clipped to the clothesline with 8 binder clips. The outdoor outlet was GFC protected, the kind with the red reset button, because the pool was less than 20 feet away and the county inspector had flagged it during our home purchase. Theo had tested the setup 4 times since Wednesday. He was turning 9, and all he wanted was a backyard movie night with his friends. I adjusted the focus knob, stepped back, and watched the image sharpen against the sheet. The picture was clean. $2,800 for that projector, bought refurbished from a dealer I found through a colleague at work. Theo had asked for it in January, the day after we watched a nature documentary together on the living room TV, and he said the screen was too small for the whales. By February, he was drawing diagrams of a backyard theater on graph paper. By March, he had picked the movie. He never changed his mind. Elise set up the folding table near the pool with juice boxes, napkins, and 3 bowls of popcorn she had seasoned with the ranch powder Theo liked. She draped a second sheet over the fence behind the seating area so the neighbor's porch light wouldn't bleed into the picture. She had taken a half day from the dental office to help set up. By 6, the yard had 12 kids on blankets. Theo arranged the pillows himself. He positioned the best one in the center, the spot with the clearest view. He kept looking at the projector like it might disappear. My brother Vince showed up at 20 past 6, 40 minutes late. His daughter Piper walked ahead of him, already bored, headphones around her neck. My father came behind them. Lyle carried nothing. No card, no wrap box, no bag. Vince had a 6-pack of beer and a foam cooler he set on the patio without asking. Theo waved at them. Piper looked at her phone. Lyle walked past the projector, glanced at it the way you look at a yard sale item you've already decided to skip, and sat in the patio chair closest to the cooler. He did not say hello to Elise. He did not look at the blankets Theo had arranged or the popcorn table she had set up. "You spent money on this?" He said it to me but loud enough for Elise to hear from the drink table. "It's his birthday present. A projector. For a 9-year-old. He shook his head. "Your mother would have bought him a book." Vince dropped into the chair next to Lyle, opened a beer, and surveyed the yard like he was evaluating someone else's work. "How much did this setup run you?" "It's a birthday party, Vince, just asking. Seems like a lot of effort for a movie you could watch inside." Piper sat at the far edge of the blanket area with her arms crossed. She did not take off her headphones. One of Theo's friends tried to offer her popcorn, and she waved him away without looking up. If you're new here, welcome to Betrayal Unfolded. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. I pressed play at 6:45. The opening title splashed across the sheet and the kids cheered. Theo pulled his knees to his chest and smiled so wide I could see it from the patio. That was enough. That image of him on that blanket with the projector light painting his face was worth every dollar and every hour of setup. 20 minutes in, Piper stood up. She had been sitting at the edge of the group, arms crossed, not watching. She walked toward the pool. Vince saw her get up. He did not call her back. He took a drink of his beer and watched. She stood at the pool's edge for a moment, looking at the water. Then she turned, walked to the fence post, lifted the projector off the plywood shelf with both hands, and threw it into the pool. The splash was loud enough to stop every conversation in the yard. The GFC tripped the instant the unit hit the water. The outlet clicked, dead. The sheet went dark. Popcorn bowls tilted. 12 kids turned around. Elise moved before I did. She yanked the dead cord from the outlet, pulled every child 3 steps back from the pool edge, and told them the pool was closed for the night. Her voice was level. Her hands were not. Theo didn't move. He sat on his blanket with his knees still pulled up, staring at the dark sheet, and his face did something I will never fully be able to describe without my chest tightening. It was not anger. It was not confusion. It was the face of a child who is learning for the first time that someone can take something from you in front of everyone, and no one will stop them. The projector sank to the bottom. Piper stood at the pool's edge, hands at her sides, no expression. And then I heard my brother laugh. Not a nervous laugh, not a caught-off-guard laugh, a real one. He looked at my father and said, "Well, there goes movie night." Lyle shook his head and smiled. He did not stand up. He did not tell Piper to apologize. He looked at me and said, "It's just a projector. Get him another one." Vince leaned back in his chair. "Come on, it was an accident." She picked it up with both hands and threw it. She's 11. Kids break things. "You're going to ruin the party over a gadget? The party is already ruined." I almost walked across that patio and put my hands on my brother. My fingers were already curled. But I looked at Theo. He was still sitting on the blanket. He was not crying. He was staring at the pool where the projector had gone under. And the way he held himself, straight-backed, jaw tight, 9 years old and already learning how to sit inside something he could not fix, was the thing that uncurled my hands. I sent the kids home with Elise handling the goodbyes. She apologized to every parent at the door. 2 of them offered to help pay for the projector. She told them it was fine. Vince finished his beer. Lyle left without saying goodbye to Theo. Piper climbed into Vince's truck and closed the door before Vince was even off the patio. The yard was empty by 8:15. I sat on the patio step with the dead extension cord coiled beside me and looked at the pool. The projector was a dark shape at the bottom. The lens cap had popped off on impact and was floating on the surface like a small lid with nowhere to go. That night after Theo went to bed, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table and made 2 phone calls. The first was to Ridgeline Ski Resort. I had booked a 5-day trip for Vince, Piper, Lyle, and Vince's girlfriend. 4 rooms, lift passes, equipment rentals. The total deposit was $4,200 on my credit card. I had been paying for Vince's family vacations for 3 years running because he said he couldn't afford them, and Lyle said it was the right thing to do. The reservation agent confirmed the cancellation and processed the refund within 8 minutes. The second call was to the Whitfield Academy of Dance. Piper's private dance camp ran every summer, 8 weeks of intensive sessions, and I had paid the tuition for the last 3 years, $3,800 per year. The registrar confirmed my name on the billing account and processed the withdrawal of enrollment. Piper's spot was released immediately. My phone rang before I closed the laptop. "You canceled Piper's dance camp." Vince's voice was tight. "Your daughter threw a $2,800 projector into my pool during my son's birthday party. She's 11. Kids do things. You're going to punish an 11-year-old girl because of a machine? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm stopping paying for things. You can't do that to her. She has been going to that camp for 3 years. She has friends there. You are going to rip that away from her over a pool toy?" It was a $2,800 projector that Theo asked for in January. It was his birthday present. Your daughter destroyed it and you laughed. Dad agrees with me. You're being selfish. Good night, Vince. He hung up. I sat at the kitchen table for another hour. Elise came down in her robe, put her hand on my shoulder, and said, "The parents saw." That was all she said. She meant the other parents at the party. They had seen Lyle and Vince laugh. She went back upstairs. At 6 the next morning, I found Theo standing at the edge of the pool in his pajamas. His right arm was shoulder deep in the water, sleeves soaked to the shoulder, face calm. He pulled something from the bottom. Not the projector. The lens cap. Black plastic, slightly warped from the chlorine. He dried it with the hem of his shirt. He carried it inside and set it on his desk next to his alarm clock. I asked him why he kept it. "It's the part that sees the movie," he said. I stood in the hallway for a full minute before I could walk into the kitchen. The mail came at 10. Most of it was junk. One envelope was not. First Regional Trust Services. Annual Beneficiary Statement for the Ruth Mercer Education Trust. established June 2020. My mother Ruth had died 4 years earlier. Pancreatic cancer. She was 59. The trust was her final act of planning, drafted with an attorney in the weeks before her last hospitalization. She had set aside $168,000, split equally between her 2 grandchildren, Theo and Piper, $84,000 each. Lyle was named trustee. The trust terms required that every withdrawal be supported by an invoice from an accredited educational institution or recognized program, and that annual statements be mailed directly to each beneficiary's parent. I had never received a statement. 4 years, and not one had arrived. I later confirmed that Lyle had listed himself as the sole contact for both beneficiaries. The administrator's office had recently completed a routine compliance review after the trust balance dropped below its $15,000 review threshold. That review corrected the mailing addresses and triggered the statement now sitting on my kitchen counter. Current balance, $11,400. I read the number 3 times. I set the paper on the counter and put both hands flat on the granite and breathed through my nose until my vision cleared. $168 to $11,400. 4 years. $156,600's gone. I turned to the distribution ledger on the second page. Each row listed a withdrawal, date, amount, description, authorizing signature. 47 rows. The descriptions were labeled as educational expenses, tutoring services, enrichment programs, but the amounts and frequencies did not match any school or institution I recognized. Lyle had been submitting false descriptions to bypass the trust's educational expense requirement. Distributions on behalf of Piper's family, $156,600. Distributions to Theo, 0. I almost picked up the phone and called Lyle right then. My thumb was on his name, but I saw Ruth's signature at the bottom of the original trust document, photocopied and stapled to the back of the statement. Her handwriting. Careful cursive, the letters evenly spaced, every line filled to the margin. She had been deliberate. She had planned. I would plan too. I am an information security analyst at a regional hospital network. I protect patient data systems, investigate breaches, trace unauthorized access, and build forensic incident reports that hold up in court proceedings. What I do for a living is follow evidence, map patterns, and document every step so that when a case file reaches an attorney's desk, there are no gaps and no assumptions. My annual salary is $118,000. I have been doing this work for 11 years. I sat down at my home office desk and opened a new spreadsheet, but I did not stay at the desk. Within the hour, I drove to Vince's apartment. I told myself it was about the birthday, a conversation, face-to-face, to settle things. Vince opened the door without suspicion. Piper was on the couch with a brand new iPad Pro. The screen was bright, the case was still clean, the retail box sitting on the coffee table with the plastic wrap beside it. $1,299. I knew the model because I had priced one for Theo last Christmas and decided it was too much for a 9-year-old. Look what Grandpa got me, Piper said, tilting the iPad toward me. She was watching a dance tutorial. Grandpa, Lyle on a $2,400 monthly pension. If this story is hitting close to home, you're not alone. Subscribe to Betrayal Unfolded and share this with someone who needs to hear it. I sat with Vince in the kitchen and let him talk. He complained about the ski trip. He said Piper had been crying every night about dance camp. He said Lyle thought I was overreacting. He said I owed Piper an apology for pulling her enrollment. She's been talking about camp since March, Vince said. You are ruining her summer because of something she didn't mean to do. She lifted it off the shelf with both hands. She's a kid. I said nothing else that mattered. I let him finish. From the kitchen, I heard a sound. Piper had dropped the iPad. It hit the hardwood floor, and the screen cracked diagonally from corner to corner. She picked it up, panicking, flipping it over, and as she turned it face up, the cracked screen flashed a notification before she could close it. Education Trust Act withdrawal approved. $1,299. The trust had paid for the iPad. The same trust that had $0 assigned to Theo. I saw it for less than 2 seconds. 2 seconds is a career's worth in my line of work. I left Vince's apartment 20 minutes later. I did not mention the notification. I drove home and sat at my desk with the trust statement and began building a timeline. Every withdrawal date. Every amount. Every false description Lyle had submitted. By midnight, I had 11 spreadsheet tabs, a timeline of 47 transactions over 4 years, and one question I could not answer from the documents alone. Ruth died in June 2020. The first trust withdrawal was not until March 2021. 9 months of nothing. Then the spending started like a faucet, turned all the way open. Why the gap? What happened in March 2021 that changed everything? I flagged the date and continued building. The following Monday, I stayed late at the hospital. Sterling Banks, the senior security engineer on my team, came by my desk at 8:30 with 2 paper cups of coffee from the break room. He set one next to my keyboard and sat on the edge of my desk. He said nothing for a full minute. He just watched me type. Sterling had cut off his own brother 6 years earlier over a situation he never talked about unless someone asked. He recognized the posture, the organized silence, the typing speed of a man building something he intended to use. You're building a case. He did not make it a question. I can see it in how you're typing. I nodded. Good, he said. Type faster. He stayed for another hour. We did not discuss the case. He did not ask what I had found. He sat in the chair next to my desk, drank his coffee, and the room felt less empty because he was in it. That is what an ally does, not advice. Presence, Tuesday morning, I called Nadia Cole, a trust litigation attorney whose firm had handled 3 cases for the hospital in the past 2 years. Her office was 14 minutes from the hospital. I brought my case file in a 3-ring binder with color-coded tabs. She opened it, turned the first page, turned the second, stopped, turned back, looked at me over her reading glasses. Where did you learn to build a file like this? I investigate data breaches for a living. This is the cleanest evidence package I've ever received from a non-lawyer. She closed the binder. We're filing 3 things. Petition to remove Lyle Mercer as trustee for breach of fiduciary duty. Complaint to the state attorney general for trust fraud involving a minor beneficiary. And a civil demand for full restitution of $84,000 plus accrued interest to Theo's share. There's something else, I said. Every withdrawal started in March 2021. Not when my mother died. 9 months later. Something triggered it. That matters. If we can show motive beyond simple favoritism, it strengthens the fraud claim. I'll issue subpoenas for Vince's insurance records, financial documents, and any communications with Lyle from that period. The subpoenas took 3 weeks. What came back changed everything. Vince had filed a comprehensive auto insurance claim in March 2021 for rear-end collision damage to his sedan. The claim listed the other driver as family member, private resolution, no police report filed. The body shop invoice was $6,200 for structural frame repair. His medical records from the same month, produced under court-ordered discovery, showed a left knee contusion with ligament strain, followed by physical therapy through August 2021. His performance reviews at the car dealership declined starting that April. He was terminated in September after 3 written warnings for missed shifts. The text messages between Vince and Lyle, subpoenaed from their carrier, started March 18, 2021. Lyle, I am so sorry. I will make this right. Just give me time. Vince, you were 3 drinks in, Dad. 3, my knee is wrecked and you want me to give you time? Lyle, please don't file a report. I will handle the cost. I will handle everything. Vince, handle it how? You make $2,400 a month. Lyle, I'll find a way. Your mother's trust. I'll figure it out. Just give me time. The first trust withdrawal was 6 days later. $4,800. My father had driven drunk. He had rear-ended his own son's car after 3 beers at the VFW on a Tuesday night. He covered it up. Vince's knee never fully healed. The injury cost him his mobility, his performance, his job. And Lyle, who earned $2,400 a month from his pension and could not afford to pay the debt he owed, turned to the only money he could access, the trust Ruth had built for her grandchildren. He bypassed the educational expense requirement by writing false descriptions on every withdrawal form, tutoring that never happened, enrichment programs that did not exist. The favoritism was never favoritism. It was guilt laundered through a dead woman's legacy. Lyle owed Vince for a car crash he caused while drunk, and he paid the debt with $156,600 that belonged to a 9-year-old boy and an 11-year-old girl. Every month of rent, every car payment, every iPad, all of it was Lyle's debt, charged to Theo's future. Everything I had seen for 4 years reframed. The entitlement, the laughter at the birthday party, the way Lyle stood there when Piper threw the projector. He was not proud of her behavior. He was incapable of denying anything connected to Vince, because every denial brought him closer to the truth he had buried. I closed the binder. Through the open door of Theo's bedroom, the lens cap sat on his desk next to his alarm clock. Warped and kept. I invited Lyle to my home office on the first Saturday in November. I told him I needed to discuss the trust. He came alone, wearing the same khaki jacket he wore to Ruth's funeral. I showed him the trust statement on my monitor. The spreadsheet, 47 withdrawals, each one matched to a purchase or payment in Vince's records. Theo's column, 0 on every line. He folded his hands in his lap and sat very still. I was managing the fund the way it needed to be managed. Your brother was in a difficult situation. Theo's share was $84,000. He has received 0 distributions in 4 years. You make $118,000 a year. You and Elise are stable. Vince lost his job, lost his wife, and he has a daughter who depends on him. The money went where it was needed. Needed for what, exactly? The withdrawal descriptions say tutoring and enrichment programs. None of those exist. He said nothing. You falsified 47 invoices to a trust administrator. That is not managing. That is fraud. Your mother understood priorities. My mother wrote a trust document that said equal. She used that word 4 times. I counted. Documents don't raise children. I raised both of you, and I know which one of you needed more. You're the trustee, not the owner. There is a legal difference. He said nothing to that. I'm asking you to resign voluntarily. No, he stood. You're tearing this family apart over money your mother would have wanted Vince to have. I understand exactly what Vince went through. And I know why. He stopped at the door. He did not turn around. He did not ask what I meant. That was his last chance to ask, and he walked through the door without taking it. I almost leaned forward and showed him the subpoenaed text right there. The file was 1 click away. But the lens cap was visible through the doorway, sitting on Theo's desk, and I thought about what Sterling had said. Type faster. Build it right. Don't fire early. On Monday, Nadia filed the petition to remove Lyle as trustee. The ag complaint followed the same afternoon. The civil demand for restitution went by certified mail. 2 weeks later, the community garden held its annual memorial gathering for the people whose benches lined the east walking path. Ruth's bench sat under a sugar maple near the entrance. A brass plaque on the armrest, her name, the years she had lived, and a line she had chosen herself. The garden committee organized a small reception every November. Ruth's 2 closest friends, Marion and Deb, came every year. Lyle's sister Claudia drove in from the next county. A handful of Ruth's former co-workers and 3 garden committee members set out coffee and cider on a card table. Lyle stood next to Ruth's bench and gave a short speech. He talked about her kindness, her careful planning, how she had wanted the family to hold together. He mentioned the trust. He said Ruth's greatest wish was that her legacy would keep the people she loved connected. I waited until he finished. I waited until the small applause died. Then I stood up from the folding chair in the second row and said, I would like to read something. The garden went quiet. Marion set down her cup. Deb turned in her chair. I opened the folder I had brought. Ruth Mercer established an education trust of $168,000 for her 2 grandchildren to be divided equally. $84,000 for Piper. $84,000 for Theo. Lyle Mercer was named trustee. I read every line without inflection. In the 4 years since Ruth's death, the trustee authorized 47 withdrawals, totaling $156,600. Every withdrawal was labeled as an educational expense. None of them were. The money funded rent, car payments, an iPad, and personal living costs for one grandchild's family. The trustee submitted false descriptions on every form to bypass the trust requirements. I paused. Distributions to my son Theo, 0. Marion's hand went to her mouth. Deb put down her cider and did not pick it up again. Claudia stared at the flagstones beneath her chair. Lyle's face changed. The composure he had held during his speech cracked along a line I had never seen before. His voice climbed to a register I had only heard twice in my life, both times when he felt cornered. You sit behind a screen all day guarding other people's passwords, and you call that a career. Your mother coddled you from the day you were born, and this is what she got: a grown man filing court papers over a children's birthday party. Your brother lost his job, lost his knee, lost his marriage, and his little girl still gets dressed for dance class with a smile on her face every Saturday. You pull in 6 figures, and your boy stands in the yard crying because a toy fell in the pool. So yes, I moved the money, and I would do it again. Tell me which of my sons actually needed a father. Nobody moved. The garden committee member holding the cider pitcher set it down on the card table without pouring. A woman Ruth had worked with for 15 years folded her hands in her lap and looked away. Marion still had her hand pressed over her mouth. I did not raise my voice. I did not step forward. I stood exactly where I was. 4 years ago, Mom left $168,000 in trust for her grandchildren, both of them. Theo's share was $84,000. He received nothing. Every dollar went to Vince. Not for education, for rent, for car payments, for a $1,299 iPad purchased from the trust account on March 14th. For 47 months of personal expenses disguised as tutoring invoices that never existed. That is theft. That is breach of fiduciary duty. That is fraud against a 9-year-old boy whose grandmother wanted him to go to college. I turned the page in my folder. My attorney filed a petition to remove you as trustee on November 4th. The state attorney general has the complaint. And the reason this started in March 2021, 9 months after Mom died, is because that is when you rear-ended your own son's car after 3 drinks at the VFW and promised to make it right with money that was never yours. The trust withdrawals are not favoritism. They are a cover-up. And every description you wrote on those withdrawal forms was a lie. Lyle's left hand found the armrest of Ruth's bench. His fingers locked around the brass rail, and his knuckles went white. His jaw came apart, but no sound followed. His shoulders folded forward like someone had cut a string that had been holding them up. He lowered his head until he was looking at Ruth's name on the plaque, and he did not look up from it again. Vince stepped forward. His face had gone the color of wet cement. I'll pay it back. Every dollar. Just give me time. With what? You haven't held a steady job in 3 years. Dad didn't know what he was doing. He was confused. He was grieving Mom. He signed 47 withdrawal forms with false descriptions. Each one dated. Each one notarized. That is not confusion. She would have wanted us to handle this as a family. I looked at him. Mom wanted $84,000 in an education fund for Theo. You spent it on rent and car payments. Don't tell me what she wanted. I needed the help. You have no idea what it's like to lose everything. You lost a car and a knee because our father drove drunk. Everything after that was a choice. Vince's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Lyle, who was still gripping the bench. Lyle did not look up. Dad, tell him. Tell him it wasn't like that. Lyle said nothing. His knuckles were still white on the armrest. Ruth's name was 6 inches below his fingers. You needed help because Dad wrecked your car at the VFW and destroyed your knee. And instead of admitting what he did, he used a dead woman's trust fund to keep you quiet. You want to know which child needed help? The one whose father crashed his car after 3 drinks and needed someone to cover it up. That is the child who needed help. And you are the father who paid for it with your grandson's future. Deb stood from her chair. She walked past Lyle without slowing, past Vince without looking at him, and left through the garden gate. She did not close it behind her. Marian lowered her hand from her mouth, picked up her purse, and followed. Claudia pressed her fingers into the sides of her folding chair and did not stand, but she was no longer looking at Lyle. She was looking at the ground, and she stayed looking at the ground for the rest of what happened. A garden committee member began stacking empty chairs behind the card table. Quietly, as if the event was already over. Mom left $168,000 for her grandchildren. You left $11,400 and a broken projector in my pool. Tell me who failed her. The bench plaque caught the November light. Ruth's name. The years she had lived. The man trusted to carry her last wish sat beneath it, with his shoulders folded and his eyes on the brass. This is the last check I write for Vince's rent. The last camp I fund. The last vacation I book. The last time anyone in this family touches a dollar that was meant for my son and walks away from it. I closed the folder, walked to my car. I did not look back. In January, the court removed Lyle as trustee. The hearing lasted 40 minutes. The judge reviewed the withdrawal records, the false invoice descriptions, and the beneficiary distribution log. She appointed an independent fiduciary and ordered restitution, $700 per month garnished from Lyle's pension, plus a judgment lien placed against his home for the remaining balance. The court also found that Vince had knowingly received misappropriated trust funds after being informed of the trust's educational expense restriction, making him jointly liable under a separate restitution judgment. The remaining $11,400 was immediately reallocated to Theo's account. The full $84,000 would take years to restore through the pension payments alone. But the lien ensured the balance would eventually be recovered from the equity in Lyle's house. Lyle sat in the second row of the courtroom with his hands between his knees. When the judge read the order, his chin dipped once. He left through the side exit. Nadia filed a separate report for the 2021 drunk driving incident in February. Criminal charges had expired under the statute of limitations, and Nadia cautioned that the civil claim for fraudulent concealment would depend on whether the court accepted a tolling argument. But the filing triggered a separate consequence. The insurance company opened a fraud review on the original collision claim. Lyle's auto insurer declined to renew his policy. Replacement quotes from other carriers came back at rates he could not afford on a garnished pension. Vince's original collision settlement was placed under review, and 2 driving jobs he applied for rejected him because he could not provide affordable commercial coverage. The state attorney general's office sent Lyle a formal notice of investigation in March. It arrived on the same day the garden committee voted to revoke his maintenance privileges for Ruth's bench area. A neighbor Ruth had known for 20 years, a woman named Fran, who had shared a plot with her in the community beds, volunteered to take over the weeding and the seasonal plantings. Vince found a warehouse job in February at $17.50 an hour. His first garnished paycheck under the joint liability order arrived in March. Gross pay, $1,260. Garnishment, $218. Net, after taxes and garnishment, $814. His rent was $975. He applied to 11 jobs in January and heard back from 3. The warehouse was the only one that did not require affordable driving insurance, which he no longer had. Piper changed schools mid-year. When Vince called the Whitfield Academy to re-enroll her for summer, the registrar told him the waitlist was closed, and the account still carried an outstanding balance of $1,400 for a uniform and costume order that had never been paid. One evening in late February, Vince sat in his car in the parking lot of the new apartment complex. The engine was off. The windows were up. He was holding his phone with both hands, scrolling through photos of Piper at last year's dance recital, the ones where she was smiling in her costume under the stage lights. He sat there for 35 minutes. He did not go inside. Lyle's sister Claudia called him once after the memorial. She asked if the trust numbers were accurate. He told her they were. She was quiet for a moment and then said, "Ruth asked me to look after you. I did my best. We're finished." She did not call again. The invitation to her Christmas gathering did not include Lyle's name for the first time in 41 years. Marion and Deb removed Lyle from the annual memorial gathering list. The committee voted without abstentions. On the day before Thanksgiving, Piper appeared on my front porch. She was alone. She was wearing her pink dance leotard under an unzipped jacket, the one she used to wear to camp. And her eyes were swollen from crying. "Uncle Reed, I'm sorry about the projector. I'm sorry about everything. Dad said if I came here and talked to you, maybe we could all have Thanksgiving together. He said you just need to hear that we're sorry, and then everything can go back." The sentences were too even. The pauses fell in rehearsed places. She was 11 years old, and her father had sent her across town alone to negotiate something he refused to face. I opened the screen door. I brought her inside. I poured her a glass of water and sat with her at the kitchen table while she drank it. Her hands were cold. She wrapped them around the glass the way kids do when they're not sure what to do with their fingers. I asked her how school was going at the new place. She said it was okay. I asked if she was making friends. She said one girl in her class also did dance and they practiced together at recess. I asked what they were working on. She said a routine to a song she liked, and for a second her face opened up and she looked like a kid again instead of a messenger. I did not talk about the trust. I did not mention the court or her grandfather. She was 11. None of this was hers to carry, and the fact that her father had loaded it onto her shoulders and driven her across town to deliver it told me everything I needed to know about what had changed and what had not. We sat there for 8 minutes. Then I walked her to the porch. Vince's car was idling across the street. He had been parked there the whole time. I took out my phone and called him. He picked up on the second ring. "You sent an 11-year-old to do what you couldn't. That is exactly why the court is deciding, not you." He hung up. Piper walked across the street. She got in the car. They pulled away without turning around. I stood on the porch after they left. Through the front window, I could see Theo's room. The lens cap sat on his desk next to his alarm clock, warped from the chlorine. Kept because it mattered to him. Lyle drove to the community garden every Tuesday after the memorial. Ruth's section had grown over. The boxwood hedge she had shaped was uneven now, the marigold beds gone to seed, the mulch thin. Fran maintained the bench itself, but she did not tend the surrounding plantings the way Ruth had and the way Lyle used to. He sat on the bench with his phone in his hand, scrolling to my name and his contacts. He never pressed call. A framed photo of Ruth that used to sit on his nightstand was in the passenger seat of his car because he could not look at it in the bedroom anymore. He drove to the garden, sat for 15 or 20 minutes, and drove back. The route took him past the VFW. He stopped going inside after the investigation became public. Some things you can drive past. Some things drive past you. The school district plaque they had given him at his retirement ceremony in September still leaned against the wall in his garage, still in the gift bag with the tissue paper spilling out of the top. He walked past it every morning when he got in his car. He never hung it. He never threw it away either. In early April, Elise brought an envelope from the mailbox. Theo's new education account statement from the court-appointed trustee. Balance, $11,400 in preserved funds, plus the first 3 restitution installments from Lyle's pension, plus 4 months of the $500 monthly contributions I had started in January. The full $84,000 would take time. The judgment lien on Lyle's house secured the rest. The numbers were smaller than what Ruth had intended, but they were real, and they were growing, and they belonged to Theo. Elise pinned the statement to the fridge with Ruth's old butterfly magnet. The magnet had been sitting in a kitchen drawer since the funeral. 4 years in a drawer. It held the paper flat against the door, and every time I opened the fridge, I saw Ruth's name on the account header and Theo's name on the beneficiary line. On the first warm Friday evening in April, I bolted a new projector to the same fence post, same plywood shelf, same angle toward the clothesline. Elise clipped a fresh white sheet to the line with the same binder clips. Theo carried the pillows out and arranged them across the grass. He put the best one in the center, same spot, same view. He picked the same movie, the one that had been interrupted. He had never seen the ending. Through the sliding glass door, I could see his room. The warped lens cap still sat on his desk, next to his alarm clock, next to a school photo from 3rd grade, where he was smiling with 2 missing teeth. In the kitchen, the butterfly magnet held the trust statement flat against the fridge. The numbers were growing. The name on the beneficiary line was the same. Theo sat on the center blanket. Elise brought a second one and draped it over his shoulders. He leaned into my side. The projector hummed, the white sheet filled with light and color. He pressed play. Thank you for watching. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to Betrayal Unfolded, hit the bell, and leave a comment telling me if you've ever had to cut off family to protect your own. I'll see you in the next one.